I didn't sleep so much as scan the dark for proof. When dawn thinned the storm, he stretched, rubbed his eyes, and looked at me like I was the weather. My name was still in the room, a ghost at the sink. The power was out. The kettle sulked on the stove. My pulse had nowhere to go. "Did I talk?" Benny asked, casual as a flick. I could lie. I could drown. A leak started tick-ticking into a pot. His phone buzzed, a name I pretended not to see. He edged past me, palm at my wrist. "We good?" Benny's question hung between us, thin and sharp. "We good?" "Yeah," I said, too quickly. The lie floated, then sunk like a penny in a fountain you're not supposed to throw coins into. I turned the stove knob. The gas hissed. We played Pioneer and lit a match. The flame, small and stubborn, held. The kettle gave a tired sigh when I set it down. Water licked metal. The leak in the corner kept its metronome. He leaned on the counter, sleep creases mapping his cheek. "Did I talk?" he asked again, slower, like he was listening to the shape of the question. "You mumbled," I said, staring too intently at the blue flame. "Something about the weather." He huffed a laugh. "Figures. I dreamed I was late for a shoot in a hurricane. You were there trying to hand me an umbrella that kept turning inside out." His voice went soft around "you were there." The kettle began a shy whistle. I poured instant coffee into 2 mismatched mugs, added water, then regret. Benny. Took his black, I added milk like a confession. We stood shoulder to shoulder, 2 priests at a secular altar, drinking what passed for courage. Benny tapped his phone face down on the counter once, twice. "Lena's flight got delayed," he said, as if I'd asked. "She's stuck somewhere, between us and not us." "Sorry," I said, and meant it while hating that I did. He nodded, eyes on the thin steam. "Storms do that, put people between." The apartment smelled like wet wool and chamomile. Outside, sirens braided themselves, with birds trying to renegotiate morning. The leak fattened. We moved the pot. Benny's hand brushed mine and didn't flinch. The day announced itself as something we'd have to survive by being careful. "Cards?" he said. "Or we can keep staring at the kettle until it reveals the mysteries of the universe." "Cards," I agreed, to avoid revealing any of mine. We set up at the coffee table, candle stubs making cathedral windows out of our mugs. He taught me a game his grandfather had insisted on during power outages. The rules were simple: count, stack, steal, like life. Every time he won a trick, he drummed the beat from a song I couldn't place. Every time I won, he looked at me with mock outrage and real delight. The apartment warmed by degrees I couldn't blame on the stove. At some point, I pulled my sketchbook. From under the table, half apology. "Do you mind?" He grinned. "As long as you catch my good side." He turned his face one way, then the other, preening until we both laughed and it broke something brittle in my chest. I drew him not as a portrait, but as a weather map. Pressure systems in the lines around his eyes, warm fronts where his mouth threatened a smile, isobars tracing the lazy strength in his forearms. He watched me watch him, but not like a mirror would. His phone buzzed again. He let it. The sound went through us like a swallowed key. "It's complicated," he said finally, surprising us both by answering what I hadn't asked. "We were good at being photographed, less good at being real." "You deserve real," I said, which is what you say when you're trying not to say you deserve me. His eyes flicked up, quick and grateful, like a nod you give a stranger after they stop your coffee from sliding off the subway seat. "Do you ever feel like people decided what you are, and you didn't get a vote?" He'd asked me if I'd ever felt pre-decided. The power flickered like it wanted to answer. Then someone pounded on the upstairs landing, a boot-beat message in Morse, an emergency or just impatience. My phone lit with the super's text. "Roof. Hatch stuck. Water coming in. Can you boys give me a hand?" And a second later, Benny's screen stuttered with Lena's name. 2 summons. One above us, one far away. He met my eyes, rain reflected there like a dare. "Come with me," he said. I said yes to the hallway, the roof, the question I wouldn't let myself name yet. The stairwell smelled like wet plaster and old penny. Emergency lights rinsed the walls with a tired red as we climbed. Benny went first, his shoulder angling. To the slope of the ceiling, a hand trailing the rail as if he could steady the whole building with that palm. When the wind shoved at the door to the top landing, he shoved back and laughed, breathless, like he'd both insulted the storm and thanked it for the exercise. The hatch was an obstinate square of metal, swollen with rain. We took turns bracing and pushing until it sighed open, the sky exhaling onto our faces. Cold, clean, unignorable. The roof was a shallow lake. The super had already thrown down a tarp that had collected more water than it could bear. The middle sagged like a held breath. "We have two options," Benny said. "Bail it out or learn to swim." "Bail," I answered, though something in me had been doing the other for months. We tipped the tarp's belly a little at a time, sending sheets of water to the drain. My sneakers grew heavy. Benny's shirt darkened, clinging to his spine. In calligraphy, the rain kept trying to rewrite. We didn't talk at first. We moved in the choreography you learn when you've been paying attention to a body without admitting it. Step, lift, check, release. He glanced at me, rain calming his lashes. About what I asked, about people deciding, I grew up. In a town where they decided everything, I said, pressing my forearm to the slick plastic. My mom decided I was sensitive, which meant fragile. My classmates decided I was artsy, which meant less than. When I came out, I thought I'd finally decided something for myself. Then everyone revised me like a caption. I wasn't Nigel anymore. I was the gay friend. It fit like a shirt that didn't belong to me. Benny nodded, mouth a line that wanted to be a curve. I was the easy read, he said. Straight, steady, good at carrying things. The guy who says yes to helping people move and no to feelings that take all day. I thought that was kindness. Maybe it was cowardice in a good coat. He swallowed, rainwater beating at his throat like worry. When you asked earlier if I talked in my sleep, I lied by asking. I knew I did. I woke up once with my own name in my mouth like a placeholder. Last night, I woke up wanting to say yours again. The tarp hiccuped, water surging. We steadied it together, hands brushing, fingers describing each other for a second. Neither of us interrupted. The city below us was 1,000 windows learning to be mirrors as the clouds began to lift. You don't have to name anything, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it and how little I could bear. Not for me. He took a breath that brought him a fraction closer. I don't know the word, he admitted, but I know the feeling. It shows up when you hand me coffee, when you draw and forget you're being watched, when you laugh at my worst jokes like you're saving me from myself. His chuckle cracked and reassembled. When I fell asleep on the couch and you didn't move away? I didn't move at all, I said. I thought stillness could undo things. He smiled, a small, fierce thing. I've been still for a long time, Nige. It wasn't a movie. There wasn't swelling music, unless you count the plumbing waking up somewhere below and the siren smearing itself thin on the next block. There were just inches and a slope, and the knowledge that if either of us leaned too hard, we'd slide into something we couldn't pretend was an accident. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He closed his eyes, as if the choice was inside this darkness there. Lena, he said, apology turning his voice careful. Get it, I managed. He fumbled it out, looked at the screen, then tapped a message instead of a call. His thumb hovered, then flew. Later. Storm. You okay? Can we talk this afternoon? He put the phone face down on the HVAC unit like a tiny sleeping animal. I don't want to make you a secret, he said, soft and urgent. If I'm gonna be brave, I want to be brave in daylight. I laughed, because it came out or I'd cry. It is daylight. Then I'm out of excuses. We tipped the last of the water. The tarp went slack like relief. When we climbed back down, everything had that post-storm brightness that makes Even trash looked significant. In the kitchen, our chamomile candles were stubs, our mugs lipped with scum. The kettle had forgiven us. Benny wrung out his shirt in the sink and looked like he was about to say something that would rearrange furniture in my chest. His phone buzzed again, an insistent, cheerful rhythm. He flipped it over. The preview was a picture, a rolling suitcase, and a pair of boots I recognized from an old photo planted on our hallway runner. The text read, "Surprise, early flight, I'm at your door, open up." I didn't know what I expected from daylight. Not Lena's boots parked on our hallway runner, not the polite knock that sounded like a dare. The text was still fresh on Benny's screen. "Surprise, early flight, I'm at your door, open up." The apartment smelled like rain, chamomile, and something about to change its name. Benny's fingers found my wrist, one squeeze, a promise shaped like a pulse. "I said I wanted to be brave," he murmured. The doorknob flashed like a witness. I could have slipped to my room, let them keep the old story. Instead, I stood beside him when he turned the lock. Lena looked smaller in real life and larger, somehow, in presence. Airport hair, wind-pinked cheeks, the exact boots from the photo planted like an argument on our rug. She smiled first, reflex more than joy. "You smell like a tea shop," she said, stepping in, then clocked the candles, the pot under the leak, our damp shirts. "And a shipwreck." "Storm adventure," Benny said, voice steady. "Hey, Elle." She leaned in to hug him. He let her, brief and careful, like catching a falling book. When she stepped back, her eyes flicked to me. "Nigel?" she said, remembering me from video calls where I'd waved off camera like a ghost. "Hi." "Hi," I answered, uselessly aware of the rain drying on my collarbones. We did the choreography of strangers who know too much. Suitcase, shoes off, the obligatory tour of the same room from different angles. Lena's gaze snagged on the sketchbook. Left on the coffee table, the card game mid-flee. "Power still out?" "Yeah," Benny said. "We were making do," I supplied. Something unsaid hung its coat on the back of a chair. The leak plunked into its pot, the only person in the room brave enough to keep time. "I didn't mean to ambush," Lena said, fingers worrying her sleeve. "Flights were a mess. I figured surprises used to be our thing." Benny rubbed, his palm over the back of his neck. I knew that gesture now. It meant he was getting honest, one vertebra at a time. "We need to talk," he said. Her mouth twitched. "We do." He glanced at me, then didn't look away. "I don't want to make anything a secret." Lena followed the look. She wasn't dumb. If pain had color, it flashed quick through her. Irises and settled into something braver than jealousy. "Okay," she said, and sat on the arm of the couch like she wasn't sure she was allowed the whole seat. "Say it." Benny took a breath that rearranged the furniture of the morning. "I haven't been fair," he began. "We've been good at sending each other the best angles, but I haven't been in it the way you deserve. I kept telling myself it was the distance, the timing, the industry. It's me. And also," he reached for the right word and came back with a simpler one. "Someone." Lena's chin lifted, not to break, but to meet the weather. "Is someone a person or a possibility?" "A person," he said. His voice didn't wobble on the truth. "Here." She didn't look at me right away. When she did, it was quick, like tasting something you might hate and finding out it's not poison. "Is it Nigel?" There was the smallest opening where we could have lied and no one would be proud later. Benny didn't take it. "Yes." I felt my own name land in the room and not shatter. I fixed my gaze on the kettle, pretending it might answer for me. Lena closed her eyes a second, then opened them to the kind of clarity you only get when the storm has already hit. "I came here to say we weren't working," she confessed, a sad smile softening the edges. "I thought I could surprise us back into what we were, but you've been warmer and far away for months. It's weird, right? How someone can be both." "I am so sorry," Benny said, voice thick now. 4, figuring this out late. For not wanting to hurt you and doing it anyway. She stood and crossed the 2 steps between them. You're allowed to figure out who you are, she said, and that sentence had a wobble in it only a courageous person can carry. I am too. Her hands, ringless, made a small, empty bowl between them, then dropped. Is this serious? Benny looked at me like the answer was a horizon he was willing to walk toward. It feels like the first thing that isn't pretending. Heat flickered through me and vanished before it got dangerous. It's new, I said, stepping into my own honesty. But I care about him. I don't want to be the reason anyone gets hurt. Lena snorted, gentle. The reason is life, she said. You're the excuse it needed. She turned to the window where the clouds were already bleaching into apology. I booked a hotel near the airport in case the power was out. I can get out of your hair. The ticket said surprise, and I thought maybe, for once, the surprise would be good. Benny moved like he might reach for her, then stopped, at the border of old habit and new truth. Do you need anything? She shook her head. Then, to me, take care of him, okay? He collects everybody's heavy boxes. He's terrible at asking anyone to share the weight. I know, I said, which was its own promise. At the door, she paused, then pulled the spare key from her lanyard and set it on the credenza with a click that sounded like a decision. Call me when you're ready to be friends, she said to Benny. I'll probably say yes. When the door closed, the apartment exhaled. The leak, suddenly shy, slowed. Somewhere in the building, a transformer thunked, lights stuttered, then held. The refrigerator started its old humming sermon. Benny's phone vibrated on the counter, a new insistence. He stared at the caller ID, eyes widening. It's my producer, he said, half to me, half to the kettle. About the storm. Doc, they want me on a crew leaving tonight. He looked up, rain and daylight arguing in his face. Do I say yes? The lights blinked awake at the same moment his phone did, and for a heartbeat our apartment looked like a stage someone had just decided to raise the curtain on. They want me on a crew leaving tonight, Benny said, the producer's name, bright on his screen. The kettle started to sing like a witness. Do I say yes? He asked. But it wasn't just about a job. If he said yes, the hours belonged to a road and a storm. If he said no, would I be the reason he resented the quiet? New love is a match in wind. Say yes, I told him. Mean it. He held my gaze like it was a railing on a moving bus, then nodded. Okay, he called back, voice easy in a way only real decisions make you. I'm in. What time? Yeah, I can be there. I've got my kit. Copy. He hung up and exhaled. They're sending a van at 9, upstate. Flooded towns, aftermath interviews, sketches of power crews being heroes. Storm chasing, but sad, I said, because jokes keep your feet dry for a second. He smiled, crooked. Documentary, but moving. The apartment hummed like it had missed us. The fridge shuddered awake. The leak slowed to a sulky drip. Benny hauled out his camera backpack from under the coat closet shoal. Extra batteries, SD cards in their little plastic coffins, a coil of gaffer tape, his lucky red bandana, the battered cap with the logo from his first set. I fetched a Sharpie and labeled things he'd never misplace because pretending to control fate helps. You're good at this, he said, watching me pack his life into squares. At what? Inventory or pretending I don't want to hide your keys, I teased. At staying, he said, and my hands forgot what they were for. We moved through the apartment in a domesticated orbit. He folded shirt still warm from the dryer restarting. I refilled his travel shampoo. We argued briefly about whether anyone had ever needed 4 pairs of socks. 2 pairs and a prayer, I decreed. He added a third when I wasn't looking. He checked his charger, checked it again, then checked his face in the microwave door, as if it might tell him who he was now. Ground rules, he said suddenly, bracing his elbows on the counter. I don't want to vanish on you like I do, on everyone when I'm on a shoot. Text when you can, I said. No heroics just to prove something. Share your location so I can watch your dot crawl and pretend that's a cuddle. He laughed. Deal. He sent the request. My phone dinged like a small vow. We made a quick late lunch out of whatever the flickering fridge hadn't murdered. Toast, cheese, a stubborn pear. He ate standing up, as if sitting would make time sit too. I drew while he chewed, fast lines. The curve of his neck under the damp collar, the angle his wrist made pouring coffee, the new steadiness in his mouth that hadn't been there yesterday. When I tore the page out, my hands shook like I was unpinning something. For luck, I said and pressed the sketch into his palm. It was us on the roof, two stick figures rendered serious by rain, bracing the tarp, standing so close our shadows overlapped into one darker thing. On the back, without rehearsal, I wrote, "Be brave in daylight." He read the words and swallowed. "You make ordinary things into proof," he said. "Stay alive," I said, too fast because other words were crowding. He set the page carefully into the sleeve behind his phone case, where people keep credit cards and the faces of their gods. The room tilted with the weight of what I wasn't saying. He moved first, like he had on the roof, like he would 100 times if we let this become a thing that counts. "Can I?" he began, and then he didn't ask. It wasn't fireworks. It was weather finally doing what the forecast had tried to predict all day. His mouth was warm and nervous and certain in waves. He tasted like coffee and rain and the cinnamon gum he always pretended not to like in case I teased him. He cupped my jaw like it was an honest thing, not a prize, not a promise, just mine. The kiss was a sentence with no commas. When we pulled back, it left a grammar I recognized, not an ending, not an ellipsis, a colon. More coming. "Okay," he said, forehead resting against mine. "Now I go." "Now you go," I echoed, trying to fold a flood into 2 words. The rest felt like a montage, except nothing was scored and everything was. The super shouted up the stairwell, "Stay dry, movie guys!" The elevator thunked like it had opinions. About us. On the sidewalk, the world looked scrubbed, even the gum-scarred concrete. The van rolled up with a world-weary squeak. 2 crew members waved hello with travel mugs and pre-dawn eyes. Introductions were quick, names that would blur into the sound guy with the nice laugh and the PA who always has granola bars. Benny slid his bag in, then paused, hand on the door, turned to me like he was checking the frame of a picture one last time. "I'll call when we hit the highway," he said. "I'll be here," I said, which felt like both a location and a religion. He kissed me again, quick this time, as if the city had granted us 1 extra second and he was using it wisely. The van pulled away. His hand stayed raised through the window until the turn. The taillights stitched themselves into traffic. Then they were just 2 hard red truths at the edge of everything. Inside, the apartment filled its lungs and then started talking in its old languages. The radiator's dignified sizzle, the fridge's sermon, the kettle's sigh. I collected the stray evidence of him like a magpie. Gum in the pocket change bowl, a sock exiled behind the couch, the smell of his shampoo on the towel, a pencil marked with his teeth. I set his cinnamon gum on the credenza next to Lena's key and didn't examine how that made me feel like a museum of decisions. His dot crawled north on my phone, pausing where highway meets diner. A text. "Coffee. Crew's nice. You okay?" I sent back a photo of the sketch taped above my desk, the caption, "Brave." Hours unspooled into evening. The sky went yellow, then the color of old receipts. The news chattered about washed-out bridges and a town called Willow Run that sounded like a poem and a warning. His dot blinked out in a patchy zone. I told myself 1,000 boring reasons why. My hands wanted to draw, so I drew the empty couch with his dent like a parenthesis and the door like a mouth brace to say his name. At 3:12 a.m., when even the city held its breath, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. The preview was only static and road noise, and a voice shaped by urgency. "Is this Nigel?" At 3:12 a.m., the unknown number dug its knuckles into my ribs. I answered with every possible ending in my mouth. Static, tires, someone's breath. "Is this Nigel?" a woman asked, her voice half coffee, half fluorescent light. "He asked me to call. He's okay." Relief hit hard. I sat down. A clatter, a handover, then Benny, small through distance, huge in the fact of him. "Phone died, van's fine. Dear dumb," he said, laughing like a bruise. "We're holed up in a diner at Willow Run." The line went quiet. "Nige, can you hear me?" I did. "Say it." "I'm okay," he said. Then softer. "I want this. Us. I don't know the word yet, I know the wanting." I could have slept on that sentence like a raft. The line hiccuped. I heard a bell ding, plates clatter, someone ask for more coffee. "There's a family. Basement flooded," he added, his voice moving as he did. "We're staying to help, until the daylight hits. I just needed you to know where I am." "Willow Run," I said, committing the name to the page where I keep talismans. "Be safe." "Be here when I call," he said, and then the signal thinned into nothing. Paced until pacing got me nowhere faster. Dawn seeped into the window like a slow apology. I packed on impulse: sketchbook, dry socks, 3 pairs and a prayer, chargers, gum. The map said Willow Run was a train, then a bus, then a walk. My fear said, stay. The words taped above my desk said, be brave in daylight. I left the apartment smelling faintly of chamomile, an hour yesterday. The train carved the river into frames. The storm had combed the trees backward. The water ran its argument louder than usual. My phone found service, lost it, found it again like a nervous friend. A text finally limped through. At Marla's Diner, blue sign. Ask for Marta, proud of you. Marla's was exactly where a diner should be, at the corner of need and habit. This say, blue sign buzzed like a tired halo. Inside, the light was kinder than it had to be. A woman with shoulders like a lifeguard and eyes like she'd seen every version of panic waved a coffee pot at me. You're Nigel, she said, and made it sound like a place you could sit. He's in the back lot, sandbags. I'll send him your way. I didn't have to wait. Benny rounded the corner in his battered cap and red bandana, mud up his shins, relief written so plain on his face it felt indecent not to look away. I didn't. He didn't either. We closed the distance like we'd rehearsed it, which we had in 100 almosts. You came? He said, and the words were ordinary and enormous. I said I would, I answered, and that too was both. He didn't hesitate. He put his arms around me in broad, full noon. The crew clocked us, the sound guy with the nice laugh, the PA with the granola bars. No one flinched. Marta wolf whistled once and then pretended not to. It wasn't a parade. It was better. It was life going on with us inside it. Team, Benny called, his hand still on the back of my neck like a compass. This is Nigel. He paused for a half-breath that lasted a year and a half. My boyfriend. The word sat between us, then pulled out a chair and asked if anyone else needed anything. My skin came back to me in a rush. We hauled and listened. I drew between sandbags, quick lines of a kid in rain boots grinning like he'd invented puddles, the curve of an old man's hand around a photograph that had survived the water. Marta's chin lifted like defiance. Benny interviewed with a gentleness that could lift a couch. He never strayed far. The elastic between us held without hurting. At the bridge, when the river finally looked like it might remember how to be a river again, Benny leaned on the rail and let the day do its work on his face. I texted Lena, he said, told her what word I used. She sent a heart and a shoe. Means keep walking, I think. And your parents? I asked, already bracing for grief that wasn't mine, and would be if he let me share it. Drafted. A message, he said. Might send it after I stop shaking. Might call. I swore I'd do this in daylight. He glanced at me, crooked smile a little braver than yesterday. Turns out daylight is contagious. We walked the 2-block main street like it had been rebuilt just for the pleasure of being passed. People nodded. Someone shouted, "Movie guys!" The sky did its best blue. At the diner, Marta poured us soup that tasted like someone's grandmother, forgiving the weather. You boys put your names on my wall, she commanded, pointing at a bulletin board already blooming with Polaroids. We did. 2 faces, damp hair, daylight honest. Under it I wrote, "Be brave in daylight." She snorted. About time someone said that where people can read it. By early evening, the crew packed up the first day's footage. "We'll be back," the producer said, shaking Benny's hand, then mine. No one acted like I didn't belong. The van idled. Benny squeezed my fingers. "I have to go with them," he said, "but I'm not going anywhere." "I know," I said, and I did. He kissed me on the sidewalk, quiet and sure. No curtains, no chamomile, no held breath dark. The sound our names made in daylight was simple. Here. The storm had taken things and left us with others. Wet floors, fuller hearts, new words. When the van pulled away, I stood under the blue sign and watched until the taillights became just 2 small, brave stars. Then I turned toward the train that would carry me back to the life we were making. I thought I knew the rules. Don't fall for your straight roommate. Don't look too long when he laughs. Don't memorize the shape his mouth makes around your name. Then the storm came, the power died, and Benny fell asleep on the couch with the city flickering through the blinds. I was halfway between jealousy and prayer when he turned in his sleep, reached into the dark, and said my name like a secret he'd sworn to keep. The room held its breath. My heart forgot how. In that held breath silence, something I'd buried sat up and looked back unblinking. I used to think our apartment sounded like a fish tank. There was always something humming, the radiator, the fridge, Benny's throat when he read sports. Columns out loud and pretended he wasn't. On storm nights, the hum went orchestral. Rain stitched the fire escape. The wind pressed a cold hand to the windows, and the city downstairs spoke in tires and sirens and the metallic clatter of someone carrying their life in a shopping cart. Benny fit inside the noise like a melody. You didn't know you knew. 25, broad-shouldered from hauling camera equipment for his production job, hair like a late-afternoon field. He liked cinnamon gum and terrible puns. He kept our fruit bowl honest. He sang only when he thought. I was on headphones. I was 24, an illustrator with deadlines I kept like promises and a crush I kept like a crime. He was by all accounts straight. A college girlfriend with a postcard smile lived 2 states away. He texted her sometimes, the softened kind of texting that means everyone is trying not to bleed. He'd point out men's haircuts he wanted to try and women's boots he thought were cool, and I'd file his preferences next to my receipts. Ordinary, necessary, proof. If he caught me looking, he'd grin, oblivious, the way you grin at your roommate the day before rent is due because you trust the arithmetic of their goodness. The storm that night unraveled the neighborhood. Lights dimmed, flared, and surrendered. We'd been watching a documentary about sound engineers, the room swaddled in blue, when the TV hiccuped to black and the hum finally died. Without it, our living room felt like a lake in winter, all stillness, everything under ice. Hold up. Benny padded to the kitchen, felt around for the drawer with the candles, triumphant when he found the stupid chamomile ones my aunt had regifted. Their scent rose like a joke we couldn't quite laugh at. Somewhere in there, he yawned, the kind of yawn that loosens your bones, and stretched out across the couch, his socked feet nudging my thigh before gravity won, and he went heavy with sleep. I told myself not to read anything into proximity. All year, I had been excellent at not reading. I could share a grocery list with him and ignore the novel sprawling underneath. Sometimes that takes more strength than telling the truth. Lightning. Made a white negative of the room and left it darker. In the candlelight, Benny's face looked younger, or maybe just unguarded. The muscles that held up his joke of the day slack, the lines that came from kindness smoothing out. He shifted. His hand lifted as if to touch some dream, and fell against the cushion near mine. I didn't move. Nigel, he said. A nothing, maybe. A name said because it's the one you hear most, like a radio tuned to the loudest station. But he didn't say it like that. He said it the way you say a word you found in the pocket of a jacket you forgot you owned, soft and relieved and private, sat still, as if stillness could undo hearing. He turned again, chasing whatever weather he was in inside his head, and a crooked smile ghosted his mouth. Thunder laid its palm flat on the roof. The chamomile candles guttered and steadied as if also trying to decide. My name kept circling me, a hawk with nowhere to land. I could have woken him, should have maybe, to tell him he'd drifted into my orbit and I didn't know where the safe gravity was. Yet,